Hi. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to Lightline Delivery. So we are solving the package problem in apartments with robots. So let me take a moment to set the stage. Something interesting is happening in apartments all across the nation. People are ordering things online like crazy. An apartment building that used to order 100 packages a day is now getting 300 packages per day. Millennials and Gen Z renters are moving into apartments and they expect things here and now with the click of a button. And work from home trends are causing people to spend more time at home than ever before. But the intersection of these trends is causing a very real problem for apartment residents every day. I know because I am one of them, and I've lived in 4 different apartment buildings in the past 5 years. The biggest problem that hasn't been solved yet in living in apartments is getting a package. Currently, every time residents like myself order something online, they have to interrupt their workday or daily life, walk some distance, surrender their privacy at home, ride elevators with strangers while at home just to get a package, then repeat, repeat, repeat. For some residents, this problem is every day. So we are using robots to automate the last 500 feet of online delivery in apartment buildings. Our mission is to make it easier to get the things you want while being at home. We don't believe you should interrupt your day or have to think about getting an online order once you click deliver online. So we deliver packages, groceries, food, anything that comes in the lobby from the front desk directly to your door. It's private, it's convenient, and it's one click to receive. So our primary business model is B2B subscription service. The owner, manager, or developer of the building will pay Lightline approximately $3.50 per hour for a 24/7, 365-day delivery service. This enables them to attract, retain, and grow their resident base. Our goal is to serve a $4 billion market, and we are starting with Class A apartment buildings. A large portion of Class A apartment buildings have a concierge that can load packages into the robot as they come in, which is why we're starting there. As we scale to past Class A, our costs will lower, and then we can enter Class B apartments, offices, and garden-style apartments. We plan to integrate with lockers and package rooms so we can work with all properties, no matter if they have a concierge or not. So far, we've developed a working prototype. We've developed an autonomous robot capable of talking to elevators, intuitive mobile apps for the concierge and the resident. We've run proof of concepts with the largest elevator company in the world, Otis Elevator, 2 pilots with the #1 ranked property management company in the US, and 1 pilot with Ritz-Carlton, the gold standard in residential hospitality. In our last pilot, we had a 70% adoption in the building and a 100% net promoter score. Residents absolutely loved it. And in surveys afterward, they said they would pay on average around $37.5 per month for the service. So we are raising $1.5 million for a 15th month runway to build out and commercialize a robot to put into the market and start generating revenue. We plan to put around 5 robots into the market and sign 10 to 20 service level agreements with people who have expressed interest so far. So in 1850, the elevator changed the vertical flow of goods and services within our buildings forever. In 2022, Lightline will change the horizontal flow of goods and services for everyday life.
Don't overdo it, man. Don't overdo it. When you
Okay.
don't be WeWork. Don't be WeWork. It's not making the world all that perfect. That was one of the reasons that Brett's here, actually. When Brett reached out, my initial response in the email I sent him back was, you know what, Brett? I absolutely hate it because I think people are actually lazy enough that they would want this. And that's kind of my thoughts and feedback on it is if you've ever lived in a big building or if you work in a big building and get deliveries, this is just the kind of thing that I could see working, even though I would love to root against it. My question for you is there enough of an incentive for building owners to put something like this in, or does there need to be that monetization model where they can charge more? Because there is so much demand right now for most places have more demand than they have supply.
Yeah, that's a great question. Typically, when we look at amenities across the board, so whether it's any smart home devices, pools, rooftop lounges, gyms, on average, the amenity premium per month is around $30 to $60. And this service would cost the apartment around $10, which we think they can monetize by either charging the residents more. So we think they can charge around $30 per month for this rent premium, but the value doesn't really stop there in the fact that they're attracting and retaining residents. So this is when apartments are looking at different amenities. There's not a lot of really great and cool options that put a property on the cutting edge that are useful. And so we see this as something that really makes the property stand out. So when residents are touring or looking at other buildings or even thinking of moving, they're going to remember this amenity and how useful it was because they'll use it almost every day. So that's where we see the value. For properties that already have some sort of courier delivery service, and we call that like A plus, so not even class A, but like A plus plus, like Ritz-Carlton. They're paying like the Ritz-Carlton pilot that we ran in Boston. They're paying $25 plus 38% in benefits per hour. And so for just 5 hours of operation a day, that equates to somewhere around $60,000 or $70,000 per year that they're paying. So that's why, for example, Ritz-Carlton, they saw this and they're like, oh my gosh, this is going to cut our costs at least in half. And we don't have to worry about training. We don't have to worry about sick days, paid time off. So that's kind of where the value is for class A plus plus, but then class A, it's just an amenity at very low cost relative to everything else on the market.
So you mentioned you had great networks, and that was part of the way that you managed to get some of this going. What's been your sales strategy mostly to date, and how do you scale that and see the future going?
Yeah, so we've had different ways of acquiring pilots so far. Our first pilot, we just reached out to the information chat on Bazio's website, and they were interested and wanted to pilot. The second pilot we ran was with Ritz-Carlton, and that was from an article that we've put out. And one of the residents saw it and then asked the manager, "Hey, can we run a pilot?" And then the third pilot we got was a referral from the first pilot to another property within the Bazito portfolio. We've experimented with LinkedIn ads, Google ads, Instagram ads, some Facebook, and we've gotten some traction. We've had at least like 15 or so different properties reach out about pilots, asking us about the service. But moving forward, we think the one thing we haven't done yet is taken this to a conference, which is how most prop tech B2B is selling right now, is these conferences and word of mouth. And so that's one thing we're going to experiment with next month is we're going to the Marriott Directors Conference for all the residential directors globally. And we're going to take this thing and show it off to everybody. We think that's the best way to sell is getting this in front of people, and then from there, word of mouth, and then selling within portfolios.
What's the biggest pushback you're having right now from investors?
The biggest pushback, mainly that it's hardware. The other thing is some people don't think we're actually solving a real pain point or a real problem. Which if you haven't lived in like a building, I can definitely see that. And then prop tech is notoriously hard to sell into real estate because it adopts technology very slowly. So those are kind of the main pushbacks we're getting so far.
Bernard, do you have any questions on your side?
And what's your biggest spend right now? It's the hardware of the robots?
Sorry, the biggest spend?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the robots. Yeah. So here's kind of how much the robot costs in the short and long term. They are more expensive because we're not really producing thousands of these things. Even at scale, we're still talking, or sorry, millions. Even at scale, we're still talking thousands. So the scale you get in manufacturing is not that significant. And then we also want to make these things very safe. So we're using like safety rated components and LiDARs and sensors. So things add up, but in the short term, we're looking at cost per robot around 24,000. And then in the long term, we think we can get that down to 20,000 and probably to 15,000 in the long run. And then here, yeah.
Sorry, yeah, what's the average size of apartment that you think one robot could fulfill?
Around 250 units is the average Class A apartment, and that average extends into Class B as well. We think that one robot could serve 250 units. 2 robots, and you probably need 2 robots past that. So that's what we're looking at right now.
Any worry about go ahead?
Yeah, what happens if so how the service works is packages arrive to the lobby and the residents are notified and they can request a package on demand, right? So the concierge receives residents' requests and places the package in the robot for delivery.
Yes, right? That's exactly right.
So what if the robot has a pipeline of deliveries, and in that case, what is the longest time it would take for the robot to deliver, assuming you have a 250 unit apartment all signed up and using the robot?
So it definitely depends on the apartment, but one thing that we found from our pilots is that even if they signed up for the service, or even if a resident signed up for the service, it doesn't mean they're going to use the service all the time. It just means they're going to use it when it's convenient. So what we saw is a ratio of roughly 1-to-1 packages picked up to delivered. And then in terms of a queue and a pipeline of packages coming in, currently we're running the service on demand. And so if we had multiple packages come in the queue, we would just deliver one by one. But in our next version, what we want to do is be able to make multi-unit deliveries. So the concierge can look at the queue and say, okay, and we'll have a smart queue so the concierge knows what to do. But okay, if there's one package for floor 4 and there's another package for floor 4 and then another for, I don't know, 10, well, we'd run the floor 4 first and then we go to 10, but we could put multiple packages in the robot at once. So we're trying to make this as efficient as possible. We saw from our pilots that from the time that someone places an order to the time they get a package, it's like usually under 5 or 4 minutes. So round trip, the delivery takes like 5 to 7 minutes, but it also just depends on the size of the building. If it's a mid-rise, it takes a little bit longer. If it's a high-rise, it takes shorter.
It also makes me think about the pain point itself, like just as an analogy, someone who has a kid, if I have cookies out and they're only being eaten half of the time, they might not be cookies that are that great or something that people want that much. How do you think about that if it is that 1-to-1 ratio of usage to non-use?
Yeah, so what we saw is food orders were usually they would just be called up with a robot because people wanted that immediately. But for the 1-to-1, sometimes what we saw is people would come home from work and they'd pass by and they just say, hey, can I just get my package? And so it was just easier and more convenient. Other times, we saw people come home from work and they were just like, the concierge would say, hey, you have a package. And the person would be like, I don't want to get it right now. I'll just call it up with a robot. So it really just depended on how people were feeling that day. And then, people that work from home don't really have to go downstairs much ever. So those types of people will usually just call it up. So it really just depended, but getting a package outside of maybe going to the gym within the building and then leaving for work was kind of the main reason that people were leaving their units, at least on premise.
One last question from me before we go to listener questions. What percentage of residents actually used the service?
So the last pilot we ran, we only did it for iPhones, and we estimated that around half the building was iPhones, and so we estimated that we got 70% adoption. And then within that, 90% of those used it at least once. 95% used it at least once, and then I'll have to look up the percentages, but I think it was like 70% of those used it at least twice. And then we had some people use it like every single day, and this was over the course of 4 weeks. So
Okay. That would be good stats to know for your next pitch when investors tell you that there might not be interest. If you have repeat usage, then repeat usage kind of speaks for itself. Anything else from you, Bernard, before we jump to, looks like Big Wing Tech's got another great question.
I'm curious to know what drove you and what made you want to work on this project and this startup, and what makes you passionate about it?
Yeah, certainly very passionate about it. So I started my first startup like 5 or 6 years ago, and we were trying to tackle outdoor delivery. So just the last mile with robots. And we had this vision of where we would also connect outdoor robots with air drones. So the idea was that air drones wouldn't have to be able to deliver at every single point in the city. They could just deliver to these stations, and then a robot could then deliver it the last mile. And so we wanted to start with the last mile, but then what we saw was there were so many regulatory barriers, and there were some other companies moving into the space, and they were getting shut out by regulations. And so we thought, you know what? No one's tackling this indoor market for residential, and that's kind of the last step. And we thought that if we could kind of control that, it would put us in a good position in the whole ecosystem. So that's why we started where we did. But I personally have just been interested in robotics for the past 5 years. I've lived in apartments, so I knew this was a pain point for residents. And then I'm not an engineer. My co-founder is the engineer and CTO, and he's always just been fascinated with automation and worked at Microsoft and Dell and VMware. And we found each other at Babson College, which is specialized in entrepreneurship. And we said, hey, let's do this.
That's my alma mater, man.
Oh, really? Wow. Yeah. Go Babson.
Yep.
Babson, yeah. Fun fact, little known, but they're the #1 entrepreneurship school in the world, ahead of Penn and Stanford and Harvard. So, not that cool, but fun fact.
You got to put them on the scoreboard too. I've heard that a couple times from Babson, but I seem to see a lot more from Harvard, Stanford, MIT for the big name founders. So maybe you can be one of those big name founders. So we had a question from Big Wing Tech as usual. He's always here and has some great questions to add. He said, what about competition? I think Saviok was the name that he mentioned here.
Yeah, Saviok, Aethon. There's another company called TechMedics. So Saviok is mainly specializing in hospitals and hotels, a little bit in nursing homes, a tiny bit in logistics. And they make a very dynamic robot for environments where there's like a lot of hustle bustle, like a hospital. There's so much going on. So you have to kind of have this small robot that's very dynamic and circular. And so they've developed this brand for, very B2B, very hospital. There's not a lot of sexy things you can do with that. And they're not really looking at residential. Aethon is kind of the same way. They do have a bigger robot, but they're tackling kind of the same market there. And the premise of that is they're just lowering the operational expenses. So it's a relatively straightforward thing. And then there's another company called TechMedics, and they're taking this whole broad base approach where they're trying to tackle everything, which we don't really think is that effective, especially for real estate and prop tech for multifamily. They kind of need something on a silver platter because the whole concept of robots is sort of foreign in the first place. But if we can give them something that is made for them and really tailored to the main thing that's coming into the buildings with it, which is packages, we think that'll be a pretty big differentiator. So there are definitely other robot companies out there. Our mission is just to make the sexiest, coolest one and specified specifically for multifamily and everyday living.